With things like pizza, cake and quiche, you'll generally have varied ways you might access information on the carbohydrate values. And as well as the carbohydrate value per 100 grams, you can often be given value per portion, which can really help because you don't have to pull out the scales. Now, it's not always straightforward though, so let's look at an example of a pizza. The packet, it tells you it's at 46 grams of carbohydrate per 1/3 of the pizza. If you know this, how can you work out the total carbohydrate value for the full pizza? Okay, have you worked it out yet? The answer is to times it by 3, which comes to 138 carbs in total for the full pizza in this example. So let's say, for instance, you eat half the pizza. What's the way to work that out? Okay, hopefully you can see you just take the total number of the full pizza and divide that by 2, which in this case is 138 divided by 2, giving you, of course, 69 carbs in half of the pizza. It gets a bit harder if you say you only have one slice of cake, which might be cut into, say, 8 equal slices. If you know the total amount of carbohydrates for it, what do you need to know to work it out? Right, you divide the total number of carbohydrates by 8, and you have the carb value of your slice. For example, on this packet, it says per 1/6 of a cake is about 34 grams of carbs. So you multiply that by 6, which comes to 204 grams of carbs, giving you your total carbs for the cake, which you can then divide accordingly. The golden rule for this to work is for the cake or pizza or food type to be divided into equal measures or portions. And then once you find the way to knowing the total carbohydrates in the food, you can then divide that to find the value of what you eat. Using a calculator is a wise tip to check your thinking. Now, some other difficult food types are those where you might not necessarily eat a set portion, or they're so common you want to be able to calculate it quickly when you can't always access scales. Of course, the perfect results come from weighing every time if you can, but the case of things like chips or let's say grapes, it's useful to be able to count as you go relative to what you eat. So let's weigh some grapes here and take a look at these values. Now we have 10 grapes. When you use the usual calculation, carbs per 100 grams, which for these grapes is 15 grams per 100 grams, divide that by 100 and then again multiply by the weight of the 10 grapes, which in this case is 73 grams. This comes to 11 grams of carbs. If we divide that by 10, we get the value of 1 grape, which is roughly 1 gram per grape, which means if you're out and about, this is going to be a fairly accurate way of getting the carb counting right for grapes. So let's do the same with chips. Of course, chips do vary in shape and size, but let's weigh out 10 in this case. Now we do the calculation, carbs per 100 grams, which 30 grams for these chips, divided by 100 and multiplied by the weight, which in this case is 121 grams. Of the portion of 10 chips, which comes in at 36 grams, we can then divide this by 10, and we have a good estimation per chip. We'd round this up to 4 grams per chip. This way, if you're without scales, you can use this as a fair guide for these sorts of oven chips. Now, mashed potato is not so straightforward, as we need to realise it's harder to visually judge. A good tip though is to use an ice cream scoop. Let's weigh out 3 ice cream scoops of this mash. Now, like before, you want to be as accurate as possible with this. So you want to flatten off every scoop so you know you're getting the exact same amount in each one. So there's my 3 scoops, and I'll weigh that. Now we do the same calculation, carbs per 100 grams, which is about 17 grams for this mash. Divide that by 100 and then multiply by the weight of the 3 scoops, which in this case is 105 grams. Then we take that and divide by 3 and we have a good guide for the value per portion, coming in at 6 grams of carbs per scoop. Now, it's harder to judge visually, but this will be a useful reference next time you're having mash. You can use your own ice cream scoop as well as an accurate guide rather than having to measure every single time. So, there are some ideas and tips for tackling some of the more challenging foods that you might come across a lot.